previously. What I really want to do is do a brief overview of the product itself, and then Kevin's going to take us through a brief demo. So let's get started, and we're going to talk about PRO Conductor. It's really an enterprise application integration engine. And you'll see why integration is so important as we go through this brief presentation today. What we're going to talk about is making the entire operation visible. And it's for the command and control infrastructure that workflow provides, but it's also, at the end of the day, accountability. A couple of other things involved in a true workflow end-to-end application, and we'll be talking about that as we go through the next half hour to 40 minutes. So again, PRO Conductor is a workflow application. And I think, you ask 100 people what is workflow, and I think you'll get probably 110 different answers. So it really depends upon the infrastructure. It depends upon the environment in which we're installing the workflow. And the definition applies not just to print production, it applies to everything that is, really let's think about it as business process optimization. And when you take a look at the end-to-end functions and things that have to go on within a print production workflow, really it just doesn't make sense to start over. Aside from the fact that it's extremely complex, very complicated, it's also really expensive. You've got existing hardware and software, print systems, finishing systems, you've got a whole lot of inventory, billing processes and reporting procedures, and you just can't start all over again. So, the way we approach this is don't create, integrate. And that integration and the fact that PRO Conductor is an integration platform is that you can use best of breed in all the components. And I think that's very important. In one of the things that is of prime importance is the PRO Conductor dashboard. Because remember, we talked about visibility. And it's visibility to all stakeholders and all the people that are involved or have an interest in the workflow. Excuse me. So the dashboard will, it's a browser interface, permissions based upon roles, and most importantly, it's information for all the users and provides the controls and functions for all of the work that is really kind of behind the workflow. There is a graphical user interface to design those workflows and the things, the modules and the functions of the workflows that make it work. It's scalable, it's multi-threaded, it provides the notification again through the dashboard because it's all about visibility that each stakeholder has to know. So, again, and I'm sounding like a broken record, I understand that. It's production visibility, providing the information to the key stakeholders, of which there is a list. And I'm not going to bore you by reading it to you. Transparency is the new green, that transparency into the operation, all of its facets and all of its functions, we believe is of primary importance. And to demonstrate that, Kevin is going to do a brief demonstration primarily of the dashboard, but recognize that there's just a whole lot of stuff behind that dashboard that's making it all tick. Kevin, over to you.
Okay, I think I should be able to
share your screen.
I believe I can if you stop, right?
I have stopped sharing my screen.
Good.
Okay, Kevin, we can see your screen now.
You can see my screen and you can see me, I think? Nope.
We can see you, yeah?
Welcome everybody, and thank you for taking the time today. So a little bit about me. I've been with Crawford now 7.5 years. Prior to that, worked with Pitney Bowes for years and also in the service bureau environment. And I was talking to somebody today, and they asked me when I started in the printing and mailing business, and I was kind of embarrassed to say 1985. So that means 35 years. I started when I was 10, so I guess I started very young. So, but seen a lot over the years, and the ability to manage and process work. So Harvey talked a little bit about the dashboard in general in itself, and I think that's what you're seeing up on the screen. And this is, and some of you were participated in the presentation that John Slaney gave as well at Content Critical. I did not see his presentations. I don't know how well it went. I'm assuming it went well. Right? So, but it is critical for him to be able to see all of his sites in a single snapshot so that he can decide whether he needs to move work from site to site seamlessly when needed. So what he's constantly looking at, John is constantly looking at, is he's looking at this dashboard to see what he has sitting in queue, sitting what's been received, what's been processed, and what is moving through the shop. So you can see that he's looking on here, and he can see in this environment that he's got about 148, well, this is a demo machine, it's not his, but 148 jobs ready to be printed. He's received 122 jobs. He's got 17 sitting in a pending approval. So at any time you can, all of these pie charts are interactive. So you can quickly click on one of those slices of the pies and it'll instantly tell you what's in that particular status for that particular job, right? As well as what's in queue, what's been rejected, giving you the ability for either an operator or somebody external to reject a job and does not want that file processed, or any jobs that are sitting in error so that need to be corrected for any apparent reason. So the basic concept that we look at is when you're looking at output management, and it's not just necessarily output management doesn't have to per se mean that you're going to physically print this device. You can have electronic distribution or extract the contents out that you're going to go to maybe PDF for an archiving solution, or HTML, or to a PDF UA, some kind of other distribution besides print. So, but in theory, what we start is you start with a file, and that's a file can be an actually pre-composed print file. A file can be just data elements that would need to be passed a composition that need to be then turned into a physical document for presentment to that particular customer. What we do is we try to take away from the composition step is the concept of adding the machine controls or adding the information that's required to process that for downstream. And we prefer to do that in the post-composition tool, which gives you a little bit more flexibility on going to different machines, different devices. I think Kevin talked about from Canon about Crawford enabling certain devices to manage the print correctly in Prisma. So with the ability to turn on dynamic perfing on the continuous forms, but if they decide to go to cut sheet with that device, then do the tray calls for that particular perfing and produce the PostScript file. So the ability to know what's the optimal language that's best fitted for those particular devices downstream. So here's we got different types of files, and I'll have two different files, and you can see we can set the status of a file. So in concept, this file is arrived. It is this one's a particular AFP file. It is waiting for print. So he has been approved and all the way go through. So what I did is I sent the same file in and said, okay, don't let this file go to for approval. And he's sitting waiting for approval. Now there's all kinds of abilities to enter information into or start a job into the environment, right? So you can this particular one is we use what we call folders or watch folders, but there are other mechanisms to input data or get, there you go. I add R's to words because I'm from New England and I delete R's from words just so you guys know. So we start with the entry point of that and it automatically picks it up. So inside PRO Conductor, he has what we call a file watcher. He's looking for particular files in this location. So those files will show up in the queue at some point. We'll just do a quick little refresh. And you can see as they start to arrive. And what we're now sitting is they're in progress status right now because they have been received and logged into PRO Conductor. And right now he's running through the particular print files and he's adding value to those particular files. The first thing is we're going to go through a normalization process and get those files ready for production, right? And I'm going to take a step back and just show you what he's doing in the Crawford transformation process. He takes the incoming print file, he extracts all of the content he wants from the physical document pertaining to the information that he needs, probably name and address and other content that you might need. In John Slaney's environment, we do this as well as we make calls to his MIS system to get more information about what he wants to do and how he wants to process that particular job. Once those jobs are then received, what we do is when we're done with it, we put the file back into the PRO Conductor system as an asset, but we get the file and we normalize that file and get it ready. So what you're looking here right now is inside an actual physical PDF file. We install comment records, and we actually store information about what type of inserter mode he plans on using for this device, the chargeback accounts, basically other information about if there's postage being applied. We also put the XY coordinates of information that we want to add on the page, as well as a name and address. So this gives us the ability then to change on demand, going to different devices, because what we did was we put information inside every page and every document inside the environment. So the same concept would work for an AFP file, since that's a PDF file. An AFP file, we would then include the TLE information, exactly the information that we need to store inside PRO Conductor. So at this point, these two files have arrived. I'm sure they've done processing. You can see now one is waiting for print and one is waiting for approval. So the waiting of approval, so for operations staff, if we went to the jobs tab, that particular job will show up in the print queue to be printed, but the one that says waiting for approval will not show up here, and it won't be able to give the operations staff the ability to take that job and print that job. So this is what your operations would see on the floor, is understanding they have all of their printers that they have sitting up here, and they have the ability to drag a job or several jobs into a device and then say, okay. Now, the good thing is about a lot of the devices, especially in John Slaney's environment, you can queue a lot of different jobs on a device because we're using Prisma there. So what you can do here is click on this tab here, and you can tell which jobs are actually sitting in queue on the system. So we worked very close with Canon and very close with Bluecrest in that environment. With Canon, we provide the job ticket, tell them where the job is, which device it needs to print on, what paper stock, and information about that particular job. Canon then supplies back to us information about where it was printed, which device it was printed on, what operator it printed the particular job, and all that information is then tracked and brought back into PRO Conductor so John can then run his reports. So you have the ability to look into Prisma from PRO Conductor without actually not having to go into physical Prisma to see those jobs. Now, if you wanted to go move that file around in Prisma, you can do that, but you can have the flexibility to do it here. We have in this process, if he decided to move that job from site A to site B, and he decides to change the location of that particular job, we will actually go back into Prisma and tell Prisma to delete that job from that system, right? Because that job is going to be moved to a different location automatically when they move it in PRO Conductor. The other step, working very close with Bluecrest, is I have to tell Bluecrest that file, that MRDF file I had sent, the Insight Workstation, needs to also be to a different site. So we'll send a close record to Bluecrest to close that job at this Insight, and then move that particular MRDF to the new site. So at this point, what you see is a job. What I'm talking about, you start with a file then becomes a job, right? So then there's not really, because we don't know what to do yet. So a file becomes a job, then a job becomes job details. And job details could be as simple as I'm just going to print and mail, but it can get more complicated than that. It could be a QA step. It could be, I'm going to go to electronic distribution as well. So I've got to package this up for an ECM content. So those are the job details. Then job details become what we call record details. And in the record details environment, you have every individual document stored inside the PRO Conductor database. This gives them much more flexibility in saying, what did we mail to Margaret Crawford Weldon in the last 30 days? And every single document can be displayed. So you can also view this particular document if you want by just clicking on it. So this particular document come right up onto your screen if you wanted to see it. You can then from here print it, email it to yourself. Again, permission based, so you can do all of that information, right? So once printed and completed, right at the end, when this is all done, we'll get rid of that particular view. Then we can mark the job as complete, right? There also is what we call, you can have different tabs to do things, and this could be an approval tab. So a lot of times we have some customers say, well, we want to approve a job before it goes. But what they also can do as well is they can dig into a job and say, well, you know, every single document is good in this environment, but the only one I don't like is we need to reject that particular document. So reject one document from the batch. And you can see that we've rejected that individual record from that. Once that happens and they release that job, we're going to go back and reprocess that job and rebarcode it, and then send information over to Bluecrest, delete the original file from Canon if it's been distributed there. Send the update to Bluecrest that that document has been marked or pulled. But we're going to keep that information in the database. We're going to keep that information in the MRDF, but we're going to say that it was electronically pulled. And there's a record of me as a user logging in that actually pulled that type of document from the print file. So that's the approval process, right? Now, if we went back to this particular job up here in front that was waiting for approval, and this is permission-based, you can actually just highlight the job and then say approved and say yes, so that job is now approved and they can move on. You can actually put a note in here if you want to. It's not mandatory. So once it's been approved, it'll now show up in the jobs tab so you can actually print that job on the production printer. Now, reporting and reports, there's a lot of new options, and we can look at create as many reports as you want. So as simple as just creating a simple report of what's in the job queue to be approved, right? And this can be actually extracted into a PDF, export that down, or you can extract it into an Excel spreadsheet if you want. And that can be automatically emailed every day at a certain time or a certain intervals. So something that John Slaney does every day is he gets a report of what was received in a certain time frame every day with the file, the customer, the image count, as well as the mailing counts. So he gets a quick little snapshot of that. So that is basically, so you can create any report you want, right? So, or look at different types of report, what is ready to be printed. And there's actually standard reports and report builders that you can build your own little report. So something along waiting for approval, you can just create these type of reports. Now you can make this a certain little click on button up here. You can just do it as well. So this is only 4 jobs waiting for approval. If we went back to say what's ready to print, you can actually see there's a lot more. And every single column that you have in here is also customizable too, and you can change those columns. And you can pump from page to page. And again, you can export this report as well, if you want to different types of outcome, either in Excel or a PDF. So going back to the dashboard, which is a holistic view of everything that's going on, right? So if we look at the pending approvals tab again, we can go in here, we can now highlight this particular job and look at the individual records for that job. And we can actually reject or action those jobs here. Or we can actually go ahead and send proof for approval from this particular location too as well. So it's many different ways to approve jobs and not approve jobs. Now, how does this all work? How does this under the covers going to work? So a workflow has to be created. And that's where you start to get into your workflow builder and understanding the job steps of the job. So the first thing you do is we created what we call an active file watcher, or jobs to receive jobs that are coming into the process. And that's what's been created here. He's looking for and receiving the jobs. So what he does is this particular step here is actually only looking at a particular step, and he's looking at files that are arriving into that particular folder. If he sees them, he changes the status to received and accepted. Now, the next thing that happens is, see, there's no line that's drawn to the next logical step. What he does is the logical step is once it's received, this particular step is looking for something in what we call a received mode. So once the mode changes on the job, he knows how to process that. So then he comes through this process to do that normalization where he's adding all of the metadata inside the print file. He's then creating the new barcoded document along with the MRDF, and he's pushing that out, as well as feeding the information back into PRO Conductor so that we load the data into the database so we know which document belongs to which person. And you can see that what we've done here is we've created a process where both the AFP and the PDF run through the same process all the way through. So once we get these files into that normalized state, we're running it in the same process and the same configuration. The same concept would go for a reprint file, whereas if it's you get damages back from the reprint from the machines, you can either trigger that reprint by hand or basically say, oh, I need document 10 and document 15 based upon the MRDF file name, the unique key that we've assigned, and those particular documents will come out. And I think we can see a couple of those reprint jobs sitting in the queue today. If we look at the page size impressions here, let me sort this by smaller. Yeah, here's a couple of small reprint jobs from a job, and we actually can change the name of those particular jobs if we wanted to, and I just put REP on the end knowing it's a reprint. So when we send these types of reprints over to the Prisma queue in the content critical environment, we actually set them with a higher priority so they'll jump up in the queue. Another concept that we've done as well is we're looking at taking the reprints. If there's 2 of them, there's no point in taking 4 pages and putting it on a continuous form printer. So we're going to take those reprints and put it into the next day's run and then keep track of those particular files in that way. So that's the next concept, is to stop doing small little reprint jobs and then be able to batch them into the next day's run. So Lynn, I'm going to take a quick breather for a second because I've been talking for a good 15 minutes and I only have about 7 minutes left. Are there any questions at this point?
There were some questions actually. Harvey, was there anything else that you wanted to share before I?
No, I think questions are just fine. You know, it's a good idea.
Okay, all right.
There is
So
one, excuse me a second, Linda. There is one thing that, you know, I just kind of want to go through, and you know, this is where it all comes together. It all comes in, when I say about all, it's accepting the data in a variety of different formats, whether it be a fully composed document, doesn't really matter what PDL it is, and it goes through the entire process and comes out the other end as either print or email or a text message or you know, variety of different electronic methodologies. But really what we tried to do in this half hour is show you the dashboard and show you that all of the information that pertains to all of the different facets of, from data to distribution, is revealed in the dashboard. And it's not just the reporting mechanism, it truly is a command and control mechanism for all of these things that are component parts of the overall workflow. So with that, let's take some questions.
great. Yeah, I got a couple. So one question came in. I have an inventory control program I've been using for years. Can PRO Conductor make use of that?
Absolutely. Again, as I said, you know, kind of initially, that PRO Conductor is an integration platform, and we will integrate from the inception of taking data that pertains to the job, that pertains to inventory, a manifest list of components that make up the whole part of the job. But yes, we can integrate with that front end.
Yeah, so Harvey, we do that at Content Critical today, right? Because they have an inventory system within a job that they tell us what inventory items that are necessary to make that component up. And then we actually keep track of those inventory items. And we also look back at the information that replies back from Canon's Prisma to verify that that actually was correct, as well as Bluecrest giving us back which pocket and which calls are made, because some things are dynamic and not everything is used in building that component. So we can keep accurate inventory items of each component building that piece in the puzzle.
Okay, great. One other question. Can I move production print work from one printer to another?
Kevin, you want to respond to that one?
So I kind of talked about that a little bit, but the short answer is yes. So once that file has been sent to a particular device, whether it's controlled by Prisma or not. So if we're managing the sending to individual printers or devices, yes, we can then tell a command over to delete that file from that particular device, that it's not going to be printed there, and then you can send it to the second device. If you're in a situation with Content Critical where they're managing their print from Prisma and managing the queues from there, we actually send a command down to Prisma to remove it from that particular queue, so then the operator could automatically then send it to the other site. That's actually done automatically when they select a job and do a site-to-site move. That process is automatically built into the workflow.
Well, and I think it's also important to note that the printer that you're sharing or the printer that you're using does not necessarily have to be in the same physical location, because the Pro Conductor operation can spread across geographies, obviously, as long as it's initially set up that way. So it doesn't necessarily have to be in the same physical location that that management is, quite frankly.
No, in the case of Content Critical, the Pro Conductor is sitting in a data center, not close to any of the print centers. So it's completely isolated away.
Okay. All right, those are all the questions that I have today.
Good, I got off easy then. No, not a lot of questions.
You did get off easy. All right, guys. Thank you so much. I think this was really informative for everybody. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and cut you guys off and get on to the next presenter, which is.
And I'm looking forward to hearing and seeing what Pat McGrew has to say.
There you go.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Harvey.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Thank you, Kevin. See ya.